Um, Good morning. Good morning. I decided after yesterday's ministerial presentations that if music was good for ministers, it was good for geologists. But of those of you with a musical ear, do you recognize the piece of music? It's Michael Nyman, and the title is very appropriate for this audience. It's "Chasing Sheep is Best Left to Shepherds." I'd just like to thank you all for turning up this morning, especially those of you from northern temperate climes who are spatially challenged and have difficulty finding restaurants. That's a private joke, but somebody will be severely embarrassed by it. Thank you, you're here. I'd like to thank Paul Schmidt for inviting me to give this presentation. It's a little like asking Dracula to take charge of a blood bank, but it's a very brave thing to do. Can you hear me okay? Good, good. For the next 25 minutes, really, I'd like to tell you about the invitation and what I've been asked to speak about, and why me. And the bulk of the presentation will be an appraisal and assessment of Inspire and environmental information. And then I'd like to sum that up with some final thoughts that you may or may not wish to take away. So why me? Or what have I been asked to talk about? Well, Paul's a very brave man. He asked me to present a candid appraisal of Inspire and environmental information. So hold on to your seats. Why me? Well, I'm old. I've been around a long time. I worked in a large organisation. I worked in the UK across more than geological information. I worked in Europe, and I work globally. And I suppose I'm close to the Inspire family, but I'm still distant enough to perhaps be objective. We'll see. And I have to say that whilst I've listened very carefully to many people over the years discuss Inspire and size, this is a personal perspective. So all of the views and responsibilities for those views are mine, but they do owe a lot to other people. So this is the school report. I like the fact that the Inspire team are all in the front row. It's good. I was going to do this as a school report, but I thought it was a bit patronizing, so I lightened it up a little. So we'll do a few highlights, a few lowlights. That's the things that are done less well. We don't have any problems, we just have opportunities. So, and then, if this is worth anything at all, some lessons that may or may not be learned. You're a really unresponsive audience, either that or I'm a really pathetic speaker. You're not even talking to each other. Good, good. Oh, and in the top corner, because I thought I haven't got many images or a video like Chris Steenman's, I thought I'd just put a few cliched quotes, and they just kind of, if you get bored with what I'm saying, you can think about the profundity of those quotations. First of all, to congratulate whoever, and Hugo said yesterday that Inspire wasn't the brainchild of any one person, it was a team. Well, whoever the team were, they deserve an awful lot of plaudits, because it's truly innovative, it's truly world-leading, it is inclusive, and it's incredibly ambitious, and it's very, very worthwhile. So, but there's always a but. There will be lots of buts, and they come up in red on these slides. The but is that, and it doesn't do well to disagree with a commissioner, but I'm going to. Potočnik got it wrong. Inspire is still a quiet revolution. This is an incestuous gathering. You all know each other. You discuss Inspire over breakfast probably, and when you go to sleep in the evening. The rest of the world doesn't care, doesn't know. Inspire is a whisper. Inspire is not well known. And the sooner that that's recognized and funds are spent on doing something about it, then it would be better. So, for those of you who have influence, either in Europe or nationally, invest more in the communication and marketing from the outset. And for those of you who are about to start the journey on size, do it now. And I'm not talking 8%, I'm talking 15% of your budget. The use case. Like any piece of strategic infrastructure, and I don't know how many of you could define or give me the etymology of the word infrastructure, but I think it comes originally from the French, and it basically means, I like it as a geologist, it means infra is under and structure is obviously structure. It's about producing a base for a road. And as such, like many pieces of infrastructure, Inspire will be there for multiple uses that haven't yet been thought of. It serves a variety of purposes. But it has to be said that the engagement with the user community has been much weaker than any of us would have wished, and especially industry. The mitigation there is that infrastructure is never an easy sell. Every one of us needs a drain. Very few of us actually ever want to pay for one. So selling something that is providing a platform for many other things to deliver is not easy. And we should have recognized that. So I would like to ask for much more focus and effort on who is going to build on top of the infrastructure and how they're going to do that. Something that Claire Hadley touched on yesterday, and I was always, I don't know, I'm a bit of a dictator, I suppose, but given that you have a very short lifetime and usually a very short time on any one project, you can't wait about for democracy too much. And I always felt, from my position as a director of information and in a geological and scientific organization, that I was never going to win the case for spending money on data management on my own. Science was always going to win. So I was very pleased when Europe legislated and that was pushed into national law, because I don't believe without legislation Inspire would ever, and good information management at a national level would ever have happened. So you always need the stick. In information management, you always need the stick, because we're not a popular part of anybody's program. Nobody sees any direct benefit from it, but they obviously get indirect benefit. The problem, though, as Claire said, is that legislation and technology just do not mix. Specifications get very detailed, and the pace of technological change is so fast that legislation cannot keep up. So what's the lesson? Never, even at a few pages, Inspire is still far too long. Keep it strategic and keep the implementation flexible. Don't plan any further than you have the ability to control. So, I think the engagement of 3 directorates across Europe is a real positive. It shows the support and the underlying backing that Inspire had. And the personal commitment of several people, and they're in the front row here, has been enormous, well beyond anything that could be expected of them professionally. So I congratulate them, and I think we should all honour their contribution, because it's been substantial. Sorry, but there is a but. Every one of these slides will be a but. So there's, for those of us who are working in a structured organisation and mostly on a project-based system, Inspire is a project, but it has no project leader. Who do I pin to the wall and ask him what's happening? Where's the organogram that shows me where the accountability is? Where's the transparency and the clarity of structure and responsibility? How do I get answers out of a labyrinthine bureaucracy? How do I possibly keep up? And I think that I'm involved in Inspire, but how do my colleagues who are in the many institutions that are represented as the data holders of Annex 2 and Annex 3, How do they know what the next set of acronyms that comes out of Europe is? What's the difference between SISE and Inspire anyway? I could embarrass several of you by pointing to you and asking that question, and I'm not sure you could answer me in 2 sentences. So, please, I know it isn't a project in the sense, but manage it as a project. Try to introduce more clarity and accountability, and above all else, brevity. Most of us are busy. We can't afford the time to read the many documents come out. In fact, we don't read them. We pay lip service to them. We nod our heads and say we've read them, but we rarely do. Another congratulation. I think just going for it, just doing it, was the best thing that ever happened. I think as a community, many of us come from an engineering or a scientific background, and we can talk and talk and talk and talk, but take no action. So the decision to go for it, even though it wasn't quite ready, was the right one, in my view. But the deployment has been weak. The complexity of such a huge undertaking was grossly underestimated, and the amount of time and resources it would take are substantial, and possibly, well, had they been put on the table at the beginning, maybe Inspire and SISE and other things would never fly. Nobody would actually commit the budget that will be expended on these projects. So what's the lesson? Well, there's still time to turn. Annex 1 proved tricky enough. Annex 2 is proving trickier. Annex 3 will be a nightmare. Environmental data, geographers have it easy. Wait till you get to the biologists. You will struggle. So think hard and maybe lengthen the timescales. I draw your attention to that quote because it's mine. I think the amount of knowledge and data that's been unlocked and liberated by Inspire is amazing. Things are coming out of cupboards and off hard drives all over Europe. Organizations are releasing information that they've held for years, and they're starting to share it. So the positives are huge. But there is so much more hidden away. Because and I'm going to come back to this, and I make no apologies, because we don't communicate what this is about. So there are 90% of the individuals in my institution, old institution, British Geological Survey, which is about 550 scientists. 90% of those scientists will have data that Inspire will never see, because they don't really understand what Inspire is. So they don't contribute to the end game of making their data available corporately, and thus it never gets seen on the UK location strategy. Even though geology is probably, Geisha Smith showed me a diagram yesterday, geology is one of the most used data sets in local authorities in the UK, if not the most used. That's good news. But what the hell does it say about the rest? Because I know that we're only touching a fraction of the potential of the data in my old organization. The quality of the data is varied, but that's just how it is. If you're looking for perfection, don't look for scientific data. So, the lesson, and this is not for the European dimension here, this is for you guys as individuals in your organizations as data providers, for the directors of surveys and other organizations. Put more money into information management. Information is what you do. Better IM will lead to better science and better delivery. And make the data available. Don't wait until it's perfect. Don't listen to the naysayers who say, oh, you can't have that, it's not ready yet. It'll never be ready. Put it out. If the public want it, if industry wants it, it will get cleaned. It will get improved. It will get used. The perfect is the enemy of the good. This is my hobby horse, you now know. I think that any good media company would think they'd won the European lottery if they'd been given Inspire as a brief. Look at it. Look at the PR potential. It's the environment. I really wish that rocks moved. I wish I was an ecologist. It's green. It's multinational. It's digital innovation in a digital age. It's God's gift to any media company. And yet, it's a whisper. We talk amongst ourselves. We make no real impact. Why aren't I seeing it on the front page of The Guardian? Why don't I see it in Nature? Why don't I see it on the BBC? Where's Pallab Ghosh? Why isn't he in this audience? Who's your media man? How much are you spending on media? You're not. And I'm not speaking without experience here. I can show you a project that has a budget that is 1,000th of this one and has leveraged its publicity to a much greater extent globally. So I think if there is one area, then communication is it. The SDI community may know about Inspire, the real world does not. Give it a higher priority. It will tangibly improve the outcomes of this project. Not only will more people know about it, but they will expect more from you, and that expectation will make you perform better. Resources. This project is huge. These project size is huge. And they're harnessing talent not only within Europe, and the people in this room are just a fraction of those who are investing their time in Inspire, but across the Atlantic and in Australia, people are contributing, sometimes in tangible, sometimes in less tangible ways. But quite frankly, the resources dedicated to this are not enough to achieve the expectations. And I speak sorely of trying to chase EC funding, especially in the science arena, that is not aligned with Inspire implementation. Worse, I sometimes see EC funding things that duplicate effort and cause territoriality and then subsequent fights over which standard to adopt, which portal to adopt. So I think that the EC should simply do a global edit on every future application, and if the word portal is in it, it goes in the bin. Only content, no more portals, please. I think I'll leave now. That was spontaneous. Right, we'll move on then. I think this is a point that somebody else, I think it was Dave Lovell, reinforced to me, that I think Inspire at the national level has been more successful than any of us ever envisaged. And I think we owe it a great debt for the amount of stimulation and the contribution it's made in improving the information management in organizations large and small across Europe. I think that's been a measure that has been huge and cannot be overstated. But, come on guys, come on you European agencies. Inspire has to add value at a European level. Where's the tangible evidence of that? Chris, I'm hoping you're going to tell me. He's not listening. So, where is it? Where are these examples of pan-European application of the data that is being put up at a national level? I think the lesson is that those agencies need to engage to a bigger and deeper level than they do at the moment. There are some notable exceptions to that. As there are too many people from the EEA sitting close to me, I'll say the EEA is a notable exception, but I think there are many other European agencies and directorates that really should be engaged and engaged with. People. Well, I think the fact that Inspire has mobilized just such a huge voluntary team across the whole of Europe is incredible. And one of the things you never or rarely read about is the transfer of knowledge and know-how and exchange of knowledge. Few of us come to these gatherings without learning something. It might even be how to produce a bad PowerPoint. But we learn something every time we come. And every time we go to a meeting, we learn something. And there are some nations, and I speak in the geological domain with some experience, there are some nations without Inspire would still not know what metadata was. They wouldn't know how to put data up on the web. So Inspire has been a catalyst for incredible improvements in the way that knowledge has been transferred across Europe about spatial data. But I would ask you honestly, we've seen a huge contribution from this voluntary network, these militia, you guys. But do you really think that there has been comparable added value? So we've worked hard, but how much of it is heat and how much of it is light? So my plea is, condense the front on which the army is operating. The front is too broad. It's too great. Choose the initiatives. Delete some initiatives. Delete some projects. I realize I'll make enemies here, but prioritize and coordinate it better. The team is there, but it needs direction. It's had the direction it deserves. Something that Hugo mentioned yesterday was sustainability. I actually believe that some of the changes that have gone into the organizations across Europe, the national organizations, are now embedded such that they will not be turned back, and they can provide a foundation for the data that everybody would wish to have. But I still don't see sufficient clarity about that infrastructure will be coordinated and maintained and used at EU level. Maybe I'm just too distant from the business, but I would like to see that articulated significantly better than it is now. And for those of you who've been in this game as long as I have, you'll know that the amount of effort and time that goes into developing an SDI is nothing compared to that which it takes to continue to maintain and improve it. And yet there are many people who sit at the tops of organizations think, well, we've invested money in getting our data up to standard, so that's it, I can turn the tap off now. I'll move my money back into science. It doesn't work that way. The investment that you make in the development has to be sustained in the maintenance and the evolution. Digital data and systems don't stand still. So, how am I doing for time, Mr. Chairman? Am I late? Some final thoughts. Please, please, please make outreach and communication a priority. Please understand that the rest of the world, the people outside this room, actually don't understand what an SDI is, nor do they care. It's a piece of infrastructure. Please keep it simple. There's a simple law. If what you're doing is multinational, complicated, then the mission and the goals must be simple. So you build incrementally and you add more function later. And for goodness sake, start to weed out some of the lesser, peripheral and duplicating initiatives. Recognize that this is not about technology. It's about us. And make that knowledge exchange an explicit goal. Recognize that the people in this room are not an army, they are a militia. And they're a good militia. And they have expertise. But they are diverse. You are diverse. And that diversity means you introduce problems for any leadership. But that militia needs more leadership than an army does. And that leadership needs to be put in place. Inspire and SAIS have a USP, a unique selling point, which is European. It's pan-national. Exploit that. Use it. Do it. Give priority to those projects that are going to deliver across Europe, not just within a few nations of Europe. And continue just to do it. By doing it and testing it and showing it and learning from it, we'll move. Don't sit there pontificating about it and thinking about it. So, you'll notice I've hardly mentioned geology at all, which will come as a surprise to most of the people who are used to being hit over the head by rocks every time I stand here. But I've got a very final thought for you. And This is the world according to most of you in the audience. A flat earth. That's the real world. Thank you very much.